Hello there everyone, and welcome to another Nintendo Switch 2 news video. We have some hardware news, we have some first-party Nintendo news, some stuff from third parties, all tying to how the Nintendo Switch 2 is shaping up to be a truly groundbreaking system that is leaps and bounds beyond the Nintendo Switch. Let's start off actually with 3 news stories in one, since obviously Joseph's local Nintendo San Francisco is opening today, and eventually you'll also be able to buy the Pro Controller there, which has new mappable GL and GR buttons. And a new video on Nintendo Today demonstrated how simple, by using the quick settings, we can map them. You just hold the home button, just like on the Switch, and then select to map GL and GR. That's it. Also, we got to see the start screen of Mario Kart World, which is of course the one before you enter the main menu. Other than that, big news. Kingdom Hearts 4 has had its first update in a very long time, with a couple of screenshots, probably a year or two away. This could be coming to the Nintendo Switch 2. Anyway, let's move over to first party stuff. Yes, we have more Mario Kart and Pro Controller news coming later down in the video.
The capabilities of how seamless it is to just transition between the regular Joy-Con controls over to the mouse controls. It was a very simple video. They even showed this off in the treehouse, but it's much more better displayed here. All you have to do when you're playing the game with the Joy-Con, you just have to flick the right Joy-Con, and then there you go. You just put it on the table, and it is now a mouse. You don't have to go into any menus. You don't have to press any fancy buttons. It is as simple as that.
We've also seen how the mouse controls have been implemented into the OS itself. And what's funny with the OS is it's literally the same one that we've had on the Nintendo Switch. It's just 20.1, while the one for the Switch was 20.0.1. And what's interesting here is that we have seen a couple of other features as well. As you mentioned, the battery feature is one of them, where you stop charging at 90%. But another interesting one that was discovered on the Switch 2 Reddit is that we now have PIN codes. So no one else apart from you can then enter your system. That brings us over to our next story, namely the hardware, where we had just recently a Gearbox with Borderlands 4 coming out and saying how it's just a joy and not a struggle to develop for this system. And it goes in line with pretty much all the other developers that they had through Creator's Voice, pointing out that this system is exactly what we have wanted from Nintendo, just a more powerful, easier to develop for system that doesn't require all these radical sacrifices. A very good example of that actually is the latest trailer that we saw from Hogwarts Legacy, the Nintendo Switch 2 version, and it shows how you don't need to make those sacrifices anymore that we saw on the Switch, where you had to add loading times when entering Hogsmeade, for example. The visuals are dramatically improved and so on. So it is very positive to see, and it brings hope that we can see more third-party games earlier than we saw in the case of Switch ports.
Another thing about Hogwarts Legacy is that they also announced that the Switch 2 version, owners of the Switch 1 version, will be able to upgrade to the Switch 2 version for, I believe the fee was $10. I really hope that other third-party developers take notice, because believe it or not, there's some games that are coming out on Switch 2 that were already on Switch 1, namely Sonic X Shadow Generations, that don't have that option. So basically, if you already own the Switch 1 version, too bad, you have to buy the Switch 2 version separately.
Speaking of controversies, one is from Nintendo Today, which is about Zelda, the Wind Waker, where they had, they showed some footage, and it turned out to be far more spoilery than people clicking that expected it to be. They were literally showing how to defeat a lot of bosses, including some late ones from that game. And if you know a thing or two, is that Wind Waker HD didn't sell that much on the Wii U because most people didn't have a Wii U, which means that a lot of people have never played the Wind Waker, so spoiling these bosses is probably not the best idea.
At the same time, most of the people who've downloaded Nintendo Today are people like you and me who've already played Wind Waker dozens of times, so yeah. I don't think it's too big of an issue, but I understand, like, why would they do that if they're trying to make a big deal about the GameCube games being on Switch 2, you know?
But we know that the GameCube controller has been sold out in the US, and that went very quickly. Alright, let's get back to more hardware talk. Or actually no, let's stick to software, because Android Restart, who covered the story first, got some footage from some people that played Mario Kart World at, I think it was the Berlin event, because it was all in German, where you could use binoculars in the game, in the open world, to find spots like you remember we did in Super Mario Odyssey when you wanted to browse through the map of the different kingdoms and just finding points of interest or places you want to explore. And then additionally, there are warp pipes that will bring you into certain tracks from the open world. Like, it just feels like Mario Kart World has a lot of 3D Mario elements. There's still a lot they haven't revealed in this game, and the question is an overview trailer coming that will detail far more of this? Like, I just feel like the Mario Kart World Direct should have detailed definitely things like this.
I'm conflicted. I'm of two minds with it. First of all, shout out to Andres Restart. He's a buddy of mine. We're in a group chat together. Really cool dude. But another thing is that I do want some mystery when I go into this game, right? There was a lot of mystery going into, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Even Super Mario Odyssey, if we're going to keep things on track to Mario. I do like that they're keeping some things secret. It also is just like, what was the point of that Mario Kart Direct that we watched a few weeks ago?
The marketing of this game reminds me a lot of what they did with Breath of the Wild prior to release, where they didn't want anything to get spoiled or limited a lot of the footage that they were showing, especially outside the Great Plateau. And I feel like there's something of a same tactic going on with Mario Kart World. I think they know that this game is going to sell no matter what, and they don't need to really show much more. Next, we have a few announcements. We know that SEGA is reviving a lot of their classic IPs, but so far we have heard nothing regarding most of these. But Virtua Fighter, which was also announced in that Game Awards announcement, has now been confirmed to have its Virtua Fighter 5, and we know that it's coming also to the Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah, fighting games, it appears, at least on Switch 1, they were the ones that more often than not came out day and date with the other platforms. It doesn't surprise me at all if this game is coming out day and date with the other platforms, Virtua Fighter 5 Revo.
Yeah, so one thing that has been more controversial, especially when it comes to third parties and even the prospect of having third-party games on the same day and date as other systems, is the digital key cards. And after the leak from Arc Systems games, it seems like there are only 3 options for third parties, and none of them are brilliant. So far, very few games have been confirmed to be physical, all on cartridge. Well, one of them is Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition, which by the way has gone gold. There's a lot of controversy tied to it, and that is that most games will be game card, digital, and not on cartridge.
Yeah, and if the only options are the 64 gigabyte cards, then part of the blame has to lie with Nintendo for not offering different options. These games, some of them don't need 64 gigabyte cards. A lot of them probably don't, because they're not going to be 100 gigabyte experiences. They'll be compressed to the point where they won't need that big of installs. But at the same time, it's like, if a game's 32 gigabytes, for example, what incentive would there be for a company to pay for the bigger 64 gigabyte cartridge? There's really none. So they just decide, okay, a game key card is cheaper, so we'll just put it on a game key card. That has to change, Nintendo. Assuming this report is correct, which why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, it's definitely not boding well for the future with pretty much all third-party games going the digital route, because game key cards are literally digital. It's just that, you get a cartridge, but then you have to download the entire game. So, and where does that download go? On your SD Express card. Speaking of, we have seen a little bit more about the SD Express cards. Of course, it's just the one that Nintendo has with Samsung, but they showed at least where it goes into the system, which is under the U-handle adjustable stand. But yeah, I think it sucks, and I think it will be a detriment to how people will be buying Nintendo instead of buying third party, because Nintendo games will be on cartridge, while most of third parties will not. Yeah, it could be an even more Nintendo heavy sales system compared to others, and I think that's also why CD Projekt Red, when seeing this, decided, okay, we're putting all of this on a 64 gigabyte cartridge, because we saw how well it worked with 32 gigabytes cartridge on the Nintendo Switch with The Witcher 3 Complete Edition. Alright, let's end on a more positive note, and namely that apparently the D-pad on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller has been they say fixed, I would say improved compared to the one we have on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, which goes in line with all the other improvements and enhancements that have been added to the new Pro controller to make it stand out from the one that is backwards compatible on the Nintendo Switch 2. Of course, this is coming from the Nintendo Switch 2 experiences, which I didn't use the D-pad much. I went and browsed through the menus, and it did feel a little bit different. It did feel a little bit better, but I think you would need a little bit more time with the controller to truly see, because we have been using our Pro controllers now for a long time, years. So it could be the fact that, oh, it just feels different because it's brand new.
I feel like the Switch 1 Pro controller is like a damn near perfect controller. If the D-pad on the Switch 2 Pro controller is that much better, they might have just made a quote-unquote perfect controller.
Anyway, that was it. And be sure to share your thoughts on all the developing news stories in the comment section down below. And also, if you enjoy these videos, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and press the notification bell, as far more will be coming leading into the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, and of course beyond as well.